Welcome to Recovery Rockstar. My name is Melinda White. I'm a person in long-term recovery. And what that means for me is that I've been able to live a lifestyle of love and recovery since December 28, 2011. And it just continues to get better and better. Doesn't mean that life doesn't happen, but it means that I have the best support network to help me get through anything and to learn how to continue living life without use of alcohol or drugs, and especially to be able to be there for other people who might reach out for help. So I'm extremely grateful today. I want to first, again, put in a plug, as I always do, for Narcan, naloxone, the overdose medication for people to have overdose reversal. Those kits are, in comparison to when we first started the show many years ago, it was harder to get Narcan. Now it is so easy to get Narcan. It's readily available. You can go on the Vermont Department of Health website to look for a pilot site near you. There are so many different locations that have access to Narcan, so I encourage anybody who doesn't have Narcan to get a kit. It's better to have a kit and never need it than to need a kit and not have it. Also want to remind people that there are 12 recovery centers in the state of Vermont. So please look up a recovery resource center near you. They're often known as Turning Point Recovery Centers. There's Kingdom County, the Chittenden County. They are in 12 different locations in the state of Vermont. And anybody who's seeking information on recovery can find it at these recovery centers. They're just such fantastic resources. So I am extremely excited today to interview the guest that I have with me. How we met, I feel goosebumps already. How we met was not when he was flying in the wings of victory. So being able to watch this young man grow in his recovery and just shine, glow, see the light on that you often hear me talk about with guests, when we see that light come on for somebody and the hope is there, and then they just start soaring. And that's what I've been seeing with Josh. So I want to welcome Josh Lash. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for coming today.
No problem.
So Josh, it's interesting because we actually just did an act of service earlier today, doing some training for medical professionals. And that's essentially what this show does too, is just share with everybody what it looks like when a person struggles with addiction, and then also how do they find treatment recovery, and then what life looks like today. So let's start from the beginning. And of course, I met your mom. I love your mom. I have a feeling her name's going to come up. So I want to shout out to CJ, Celinda. But let's start from kind of the earlier days. So tell me a little bit about what your life looked like as a young person.
So, growing up, wasn't really a bad life. Middle class. Very kind of. I don't really know how to explain it. Just a normal life. I didn't really have a whole lot to do other than hanging out with friends outside of school. I always liked four-wheeling.
Native Vermonter, right?
Yeah, native Vermonter. I always ended up, I was just always kind of chasing a group of friends to be around.
Yeah.
And it was kind of hard fitting in. I had an easy time fitting in everywhere, but I always felt like I had a hard time fitting in. Mm-hmm. So, trying to,
just know who you are as a person,
I was just trying to figure out who I was.
Yeah. I hear that so much too. A lot of times people feel like, I didn't know how to fit in, and then they experienced use of some sort. So what did that look like for you? Like the first time that you used, what did that look like?
So, the first time I used it was, just a normal everyday kind of get together. Started hanging out with a different group of friends, and I'd already been drinking. I'd already had a good buzz going, and when I'm drinking, I kind of just get the screw it's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our impulses come right out, and we have kind of no filter, right?
Yeah.
No fear.
Yeah, pretty much. So, I was hanging out with this different group of friends, and again, just trying to fit in, and I just wanted to be a part of whatever they were doing, and hard drugs was what they were up to. So, I picked up right along beside all of them, trying to fit in, and it was just a normal day for me, really. I wasn't really having a bad time, or I was having a good time. It was fun at first,
right.
And it always starts out that way.
Yep.
Anyway.
I appreciate that you say that too, because I know earlier when we were talking in our training this morning that the other person also mentioned, the reality is we don't start using and then keep using because it's horrible, right? It doesn't start out horrible, and that's kind of how the hook comes in. So, about what age were you when you had experienced the harder drugs? And I guess what are the harder drugs when you say that for viewers?
So, harder drugs being like cocaine, heroin, opiates, stuff like that. I started drinking really young. I started smoking weed really young. But first time I picked up like hard drugs, I was around 14 or 15 years old.
Okay, which is still fairly young. Okay. So it sounds like for the most part, because sometimes people, it's like trauma and they're covering up trauma. And for other people, like it's just we enjoy it, we have fun with it. And sometimes we experience trauma during our addiction, right, through that journey. But it sounds like for you, it was really just kind of having fun, experimenting, fitting in. And then do you recall when it started getting on your radar that a bad outcome happened?
Yeah, it was probably around like the age of 18 or 19 that, I started realizing I wasn't really doing it to party or have fun. I was doing it because like I felt like I needed to just to not feel like emotions and stuff. Because by around that time, I did have some trauma built up, not from like, certain family matters and, past experiences that I've been through. I didn't realize at first that I was using it to mask emotion, but that's pretty much why I was using at
So
that
that's
time.
why you continued.
Yeah, and I continued to use and drink real heavy because it just numbs your pain, it numbs your head. You don't think about anything. It's not like it's
And did you find that, and I know that I kind of know the answers to this, but I just want to make sure the viewers hear it. Did you find yourself gravitating towards people that used harder so then you didn't maybe look so bad or?
Yeah, so my way of using is just heavily in general. So when I started, drinking really heavy, using drugs really heavy, I started kind of changing my friend group up to how I was putting people around me that used like I did that could keep up,
Yep, that's a common thing too, is that, we find people that are using harder than us, so then we can feel like we're not that bad. And at the same time, people aren't using as much. It's like, well, they just don't know what they're missing, right?
Right.
And did you find that you ever had a point, you had mentioned you felt like you had to, so it sounds like emotions were part of that, like self-medicating. Did you ever have a time where you decided like, okay, I'm going to stop for a little bit, and then there was a physical response that you didn't expect to have happen?
Yeah, so there has been a couple times where, I like before I started getting really heavy into it and was dependent on opiates, where I was like, this probably isn't all that good for me. I tried to stop a couple times, and in the beginning I went maybe, a couple months without using opiates, and I always had a bad problem like rolling my ankles. I have really bad ankles, and I had an accident at work, and I just, instead of taking Tylenol, I just decided to go the harder route because it worked a little better and it was instant.
Right.
So, yeah, there's been a couple times where, physical pain was kind of drawing me back towards opiate use.
And that's another common thing too is, as we know, addiction is a disease of the brain where we may make a promise to ourselves like, okay, today I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to use drugs. And then as soon as we have a little bit and we say, well, just a little bit, we lose the power of choice. And I think that's where the misconception for a lot of people comes in, because a lot of people say, well, it's a choice, it's a choice. Well, when we're clear of mind, it's a choice to pick up. But once we pick up, we don't have the same control because our brain just doesn't function the same way, right? So when is the first time that you were willing to admit, I've got an issue and I need help, and you sought some kind of help?
I was probably around like 23, 24 years old. I was living with a friend at the time, and he had been pointing out to me for a while now that like he was suggesting to go get help because he saw me kind of spiraling. I wasn't like I wasn't using really heavy at the time, but like I was still using and it was noticeable, you know, like when you're using you don't think people can see it because you think you're hiding it so well. But in all reality, like your friends and family, the people that are close to you can see the difference, you know, your body language, the way you go about things, like the way you react to stuff. And yeah, so I was probably like 23, 24 years old when I like first realized like I need help getting away from this stuff because I mentally couldn't handle it,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and it is, I love how you're also highlighting. It's almost like everybody else around us knows we need help before we are willing to admit to ourselves. I think we know too, but before we're willing to admit and we think we're fooling the world, right?
Right.
So what was the first move you did for help? Like, did you make a phone call to a treatment place or talk to a doctor, or what did that look like, the first attempt?
My first like true attempt, like my attempt to getting help. The first time I went into treatment, I wasn't really reaching out to help. I was doing it for, you know, other people. In all reality, like the first time I went to treatment was because I had to let somebody else watch my dog, and like I went to treatment for the sole purpose that like my plans were getting my dog back after, and at the time I realized like. At the time, I thought, you know, not getting my dog back was an act to hurt me. But like, I realized now, you know, I probably wasn't really the best owner for my dog, and so I've kind of lost that resentment towards that person a little bit. But like, my first true like act for getting help was the second time I went to Valley Vista.
Yeah.
And you know, I did want to get clean. I wasn't ready to. Yeah. But like again, I was kind of doing it for other people. Like my family was really kind of giving me hell about getting clean and, you know, trying to figure my life out. But yeah, that was the first time I like tried it for myself to get clean.
Right. So it sounds like you were kind of on board with it, like you wanted to, so you could manage to not lose your dog, not lose more family trust, which is such a common thing. I mean, I know I've already mentioned that too. For me, there was times that I did go away because I didn't want to live in the hell I was living in anymore, but I also didn't necessarily want to completely stop, right? Like I just want to learn how I can use a little bit and still, you know, function, right? But I think, you know, we hear it often that once you're a pickle, you can't become a cucumber again, you know, or even like the chasing the dragon, like with opiates and the hard drugs, it's like we can never get that feeling that we had, and it takes so much more, and even then it's like we can just never get back. And that's how like the disease of addiction, it's a progressive disease, right? So it doesn't matter what we do, we can't change the way that our body and our brain changes to respond to drugs and alcohol. So you made the attempt, seeds were probably planted, you had an idea that okay, there is treatment and recovery out there, not totally digging, you know, doing all the suggestions. And then did you find yourself eventually come to a place where you realized like you need to ask for help again, and this time you were like in a more willing place?
Yeah. The third time I tried getting clean was I have the same sober date 2 years in a row, October 17th in 2022. That was like the time I was like, yeah, like I can't do this anymore. I called Valley Vista on my own. That was also a time like I saw you in the hospital, and yeah. So it's like such a coincidence that like a year apart to the day, like I tried getting clean. Like
I remember that too. I remember that. It's so weird.
Yeah, but that was the time I was like actually trying. Like I thought I was ready, but again, you know, like. I wasn't ready to change my surroundings. I had no plans to do anything like after treatment, and that's what was different about the last time I went to treatment. Was like I had the realization while I was in there. I was in a wheelchair while I was in there. I couldn't walk at all because I had a cyst on my foot from xylazine, and I remember wheeling around in Valley Vista, and my aftercare specialist at the time, God bless that man's soul, he guided me in the right direction. He told me about a couple guys that were coming in to speak, and when they were done speaking, I wheeled my way right over to them, and you know, I couldn't even stand up to shake their hand. I'm big on like respect, you know, like you stand up, shake someone's hand. Respect is just a big factor for me, and I couldn't even do that. Like, and it was like at that time I was like, man, I really have to change. Like, I really have to do something about this. And that was a game changer for me, was talking with them and hearing everything that they had to say. If it wasn't for them coming in to treatment to speak, I probably wouldn't have had any plans to leave.
Wow. So is it safe to say that for you, of all the different experiences that you had, it sounds like hearing from somebody else who had traveled a similar journey, that's what resonated?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was, you know, because the guys that own the house I'm in now, one of them especially, I clicked with like big time. Like, we almost had the same story, and it was hearing what he had been through, what he had to do, and what he did that got him to where he is today. That gave me like all the motivation I needed to, you know, change my surroundings, people, places, things. I changed everything. Like, I have a different phone number now. Like, I react to stuff differently. I worked on like learning all my emotions. I worked on, you know, my speech, like even how I talk. Like, I had to change everything.
Right. And that's a lot, right?
Yeah, it's a lot.
We often hear that what you need to do, it's very simple. It's not like complicated. You don't have to be super intellectual to travel the road of solution. So it's simple, but it's not easy, right?
No, it's not easy at all. But it gets easier as time goes on.
Exactly,
You know,
right.
you learn how to function, being sober. Like, since I first started using, I never had to worry about emotions, because I didn't really have them much.
Yeah.
You know. So now that I'm sober, I'm figuring out all these new emotions that I have, and it's, you know, it's stressful at times, but it's beautiful.
Yeah. Isn't it nice to feel again?
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, right.
And tell me a little bit. So you had mentioned too, like, I know your story with xylazine, right?
Mm-hmm.
So prior to going to the emergency department, or that day that you went, on the last time that you went before you went to treatment, so you had been using opioids and xylazine. Did you know that xylazine was mixed in?
I knew that the people I was associated with would talk about trank, and I didn't realize, I didn't know what it was. All I knew was like, yep, something different that they're putting in it now, and it's really strong, and I didn't know that like it wasn't an actual opiate, so like Narcan won't bring you back.
Right.
And I didn't know about any of that.
Right. And I ask that because a lot of times people are unknowingly using it, thinking they're purchasing something else, which is really, that's what happens, right? Even if people think they're buying heroin, you're actually getting fentanyl, maybe xylazine. So you never, not that there's ever been ethics in drug dealing, but it's just the potency of the substances that are on the streets is more than ever, because as you said, there is no reversal for xylazine, and nobody uses straight xylazine. They use it because it's mixed with, whether it's mixed with heroin, fentanyl, so it's in conjunction with an opioid. That's really the common, you know, combination. So for you had mentioned now you had an issue with your foot. Xylazine was starting to harm your body, right?
Yeah. So, like, pretty much what xylazine did to me was, on top of, you know, being really strong, what it did to me was I started getting breakouts all over my skin. I have scarring all over from it. Another like big factor that comes with xylazine is it doesn't take long for you to start getting sick from it. Yeah. Like, heroin back in the day, you could go like a whole day and a half without it before you started feeling sick. Then fentanyl came around, and you could go like maybe a full work day. Like, if you used in the morning, you would be fine until you got home. But what xylazine does is you need it every 2-3 hours.
Right.
So like, you find yourself always chasing it. You can't even work without it. You need it every 2-3 hours, or you just feel like you can't move.
Right, and what it does too, and I guess for viewers to know, so xylazine is known as trank, right? That's the street name for it. And it's essentially a tranquilizer for large animals like elephants and horses. It was never meant for humans' consumption. It's not FDA approved. There's no reversal. There is for animals. There's Zolazine. But again, they can't approve that for humans because it was never meant for human consumption. So super dangerous drug out there on the streets right now. And that's what you almost lost your foot as a result of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I ended up getting a really big cyst on the bottom of my foot. Like, I couldn't even put pressure on my foot. My mom had to wheel me into rehab in a wheelchair. Like, they needed to get a wheelchair for me. I couldn't walk for probably a whole month.
Wow. And I know you had to go to Dartmouth eventually and you were able to return. And that's the thing is that xylazine, it restricts blood flow. So there's just literally the body, the skin starts rotting. So we know it's a miracle, right? Like a huge miracle that you didn't have to lose your foot, that you were able to eventually heal from it. And so you went back to Valley Vista and then you eventually went to the sober residence in Maine. And that's where you still are, right?
Yep, I'm still in Saco.
And what do you do now? Like, what is your average? Well, actually, before I jump into right now, what have you found during the process between getting to Maine and then where you are now? What have you found as helpful tools for your recovery?
Fellowship's a big one.
Yeah.
You gotta surround yourself with people who have the same goal as you, and that's to stay sober and, you know, figure your life out, figure out who you are.
Yeah. So you found some people that, I mean, you already kind of alluded to that. You heard a couple guys go into Valley Vista. They shared in a way that you wanted what they had. So you followed those suggestions. And then what does a typical day look like in your life now?
Typical day for me, I work every day other than weekends. I like having the weekends to myself. But on my free time outside of work, I go to meetings. I work the 12 steps. I have a sponsor and everything, and I turn to my sponsor for everything. Like, new emotions that come up, like I talk to him about it, good and bad. I stay connected with him on all aspects, like people in the house. Like, I talk to guys in the house a lot. There's 7 or 8 other guys that's in the house I'm in, and if it wasn't for having that fellowship, like being able to turn to people, being able to talk to people about my problems, that's a big one for me. So that fellowship is what I need in my life in order to, you know, stay on the direct path to what I'm looking at right now.
Right. Like, continue that journey.
Yeah.
And do you have, how do you start your day?
I start my day, I wake up, through the program, I've found my higher power. I pray, like, first thing in the morning. You know, I'm just grateful to wake up. I pray for, you know, my loved ones, my close family. I pray to, like, you know, help me figure out how to steer away from bad situations, you know, like, not even like drug related, like situations that can cause me to think bad.
Right. And that's wisdom. Like, the longer we're in this journey of recovery, the more we realize it's not just about trying to stay away from alcohol and drugs, but it's to stay away from those scary slopes that'll take us down. Even if we're not using, we don't get in recovery to be miserable. So having those connections. And have you ever found that you've had a time where you're feeling super over emotional and freaked out because you got some news or something's going on, and you talk to your sponsor and your sponsor isn't freaking out with you and just says, oh yeah, that's normal?
Yeah. So, like, there was one instance, I was at a place and somebody pulls out a bag of cocaine, and, like, I'd already talked to this guy about being in recovery, and I wasn't even as upset at the fact that he, like, pulled a substance out in front of me. I was more upset about the fact that, like, he had, even after me talking to him about, like, where I've been, you know, showing him pictures of what I looked like, that he would even pull that out around me. So I got really upset about it. And, like, before, I would have just used or drank over it. But, like, now, after figuring out, like, finding all the tools that I have now, the first thing I think of is I got to call somebody. Like, I got to call my sponsor, talk to him about it, like, see what he would do, and you know, or other people in the houses, and they guide me in the right direction.
Awesome. And that's like a perfect example of why having, you know, your sober posse, having your fellowship, having your people is so critical. So, and as we're nearing the end, the time goes so fast here. So what would be something that you would want to tell if there's any viewers listening, whether they're family members of people that are struggling or somebody struggling themselves, what message would you want them to hear in all of this?
So, for the people that have family members, you know, if you're not an alcoholic or an addict, don't give up on the people that you're trying to help. They need to know that they're loved. They need to know that, like, there is a choice to continue doing what you're doing or to change for the better. And for the people who are struggling right now, like, there's a way out. You can do this. Like, if I can do this, anybody can do this. I didn't see myself being anybody but, you know, the guy sleeping on the streets, the guy losing everything, the guy that ended up losing his dog. You know, my dog was like my child. Like, you can do this. Like, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Don't give up.
I am so proud of you. I feel like I've had goosebumps a lot through this, and I've tried so hard not to get emotional because I remember, you know, meeting you in the past and then seeing you again and seeing you now, and even seeing the pictures that your mom had sent to me with the ocean in the background and the lighthouses. And I'm like, he's so beautiful. Look at him. You look so healthy and so happy. And it's like, that's not who I saw. And yet the reality is, no matter how much a person struggles, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that they're hopeless. It doesn't mean they can't do it. And I know for me, I often say the power of a praying mom is what kept me alive. And I know for you, your mom has been a huge, strong support and foundation in your world. So I am just so grateful that you were willing to come on this show. You've done, I know I've kind of hijacked you for a few projects in the last few months, and you have that willingness, right? Because we're taught to say yes to be of service. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking care of yourself, because it's such a blessing to me and many people that know you, and that in and of itself is a way to help other people. Like, you don't even have to talk to them for them to be helped, just so that them watching you is what makes that change. So thank you for sharing your story. I appreciate you. Hug your mom for me.
I will.
And I want to thank all of the viewers for watching the show today. If you are in need of help, again, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of the Turning Point Recovery Centers in the state of Vermont. There are 12 of them, and they are recovery resource centers. So they're closely connected with community partners, whether it's medical, clinical, outpatient, recovery supports, faith-based. There's just so many different services that are connected with your recovery center. So please reach out, know that there's hope, and we'll see you next time on Recovery Rockstars.